Captured by a human, the alien general begged for mercy. The silent agreement. The plasma bolt struck 3 inches from Rook Davenport's head, searing the cave wall with a hiss that echoed through the cavernous space. He froze, one hand still clutching the ancient artifact he'd been examining, the other hovering over his sidearm. A futile gesture, he realized, as the second shot knocked the weapon from his holster before he could even grip it. "Impressive reflexes for a human," came a voice from the shadows. It was smooth, almost melodic, but tinged with an unmistakable current of menace. Most would have lost their fingers with that shot. Rook lowered his hand slowly, careful to make no sudden movements. "I'm a researcher, not military. There's no need for weapons." A figure emerged from the darkness, tall and imposing. Her exoskeleton armor gleamed with a dull purple iridescence, angular plates shifting soundlessly as she approached. What struck Rook most were her eyes, vertical pupils set in amber irises that seemed to glow with their own internal light. "Researchers," she said, the word dripping with disdain, "don't typically carry military-grade stealth modules or penetrate security cordons." She gestured with her weapon, a sleek rifle that hummed with energy. "Commander Valerian, Hegemony Defense Force, you're trespassing in a restricted zone." Restricted, Rook's surprise was genuine. The star charts marked this system as unaligned space. I was following archaeological readings. Valerian's head tilted slightly, a gesture that reminded Rook of a predatory bird. "The borders shifted last lunar cycle. Your data is outdated." "That would explain the patrol ships," Rook muttered. He'd barely escaped them, diving into this network of caves that riddled the small moon's surface. "Look, Commander, this is clearly a misunderstanding. I can leave immediately." "That won't be necessary." Valerian stepped closer, the points of her armor catching the dim light from Rook's fallen headlamp. "You've seen too much already." Rook's heart sank. He'd heard stories about the hegemony's treatment of spies, real or perceived. Execution was the merciful option. "I've seen nothing but rocks and dust. I swear it." "You're standing in the entrance to an ancient weapons cache that predates both our civilizations," Valerian said flatly. "The hegemony has spent decades securing these sites." For the first time, Rook looked beyond the artifact in his hand, taking in the vast chamber behind him. What he'd thought were natural rock formations were actually massive structures, geometric and purposeful. His archaeologist's eye could now discern patterns, technology dormant but preserved. "I had no idea," he breathed, professional curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. "This is precursor architecture. And you just happened to stumble upon it." Skepticism dripped from every word. "I follow energy signatures, specific isotope patterns. I've been tracking precursor sites for years." Rook dared to look directly into those predatory eyes. "I'm not here to steal weapons. I study extinct civilizations." Something shifted in Valerian's posture, not softening exactly but recalculating. "You work alone." "I prefer it that way. Fewer bureaucratic entanglements." Valerian was silent for a long moment, her weapon never wavering. "Kneel." Rook hesitated only briefly before complying, dropping carefully to his knees on the rough stone. The position made him acutely aware of his vulnerability, the cold seeping through his flight suit, the weight of the alien's judgment pressing down on him. "I'll serve as your guide," he said, swallowing his pride. "Just don't execute me. My data on the precursors could benefit the hegemony." "Serve me?" Valerian's mandibles clicked in what Rook realized was amusement. "Humans and their dramatic surrenders. I require information, not servitude." "I'm improvising under pressure," Rook said with a grim smile. "Not my finest moment." To his surprise, Valerian lowered her weapon slightly. "The fact that you found this place without hegemony technology is concerning, perhaps useful." She tapped something on her wrist guard, and a holographic display sprang to life between them. 3 cycles ago, We detected anomalous activity at 7 precursor sites across this sector. Energy spikes inconsistent with dormant technology. The display showed a star map with pulsing points of light. Something is activating them, or someone. Rook frowned. That's impossible. Precursor tech has been inactive for millennia. It would take a specific activation sequence, Valerian finished. One that might be found in the very artifacts collectors like yourself hunt for. Understanding dawned on Rook's face. You think I'm involved? I think you might be useful. She retracted her helmet, revealing more of her face. Angular features, skin with a faint bluish cast, and those remarkable eyes. Without the armor's filtration, her voice was clearer, less mechanical. The alternative is interrogation followed by disposal. When you put it so charmingly, how can I refuse? Despite his sarcasm, Rook's mind was racing. Activating precursor sites would require knowledge far beyond what even the most dedicated archaeologists possessed. If someone had that capability, the implications were staggering. Stand, Valerian commanded, slowly. As Rook rose, the ground beneath them trembled. A faint vibration at first, then strengthening until loose stones clattered across the floor. Is that normal for this region? He asked, steadying himself against a column. Valerian's expression hardened. No. She activated her comm unit, barking orders in her native language. The response came back garbled, punctuated by what sounded like weapons fire. We need to move, she said, suddenly all efficiency. Now. What's happening? The site is activating. She seized his arm, her grip surprisingly strong through the armor. And my team topside is under attack. They sprinted through the tunnels, Valerian leading with unerring precision despite the dim light. Twice they paused as passages behind them collapsed, dust billowing through the ancient corridors. Your ship, Valerian demanded as they approached the surface. Where is it? Hidden in the northern ravine, Rook panted. Cloaking Field should have kept it safe. If it's still there, we'll use it. My shuttle was the first target. The implications weren't lost on Rook. Professional job, then. Very, Valerian's tone was grim. They emerged into chaos. The small moon's purplish sky was torn by weapons fire, sleek ships darting between clouds. On the ground, Valerian's squad had established a perimeter, exchanging fire with attackers using the rocky terrain for cover. Commander, a wounded soldier called out as they approached. Unknown forces breached our defenses. They targeted communication arrays first, then hit the shuttles. Casualties? Valerian asked, pulling Rook down behind a barricade. Tamik and Joris didn't make it, Saves badly wounded. Valerian nodded, her expression unreadable. Hold position, we have potential extraction. She turned to Rook. Can your ship handle my team? It's designed for 2, maybe 3 in an emergency, Rook admitted. How many survived? 4, including myself. She assessed him with those piercing eyes. Will you help us? It was a genuine question, Rook realized. Despite having him at gunpoint minutes earlier, she was now asking for his cooperation. 4 is doable, tight but doable. He pulled out a small device from his pocket. This will deactivate the cloaking field. 2 kilometers north, follow the signal. Valerian took the device, studying it briefly before passing orders to her remaining squad. As they prepared to move out, the ground shook again, more violently this time. That's not good, Rook muttered, staring back at the cave entrance. A faint blue glow was now emanating from within, pulsing like a heartbeat. The activation sequence is accelerating. Can you stop it? Rook shook his head. Not without knowing what triggered it, but I can record the energy pattern. Might help us understand what we're dealing with. Valerian hesitated only a moment before nodding. Make it quick. Rook pulled equipment from his pack, working with practiced efficiency despite the battle raging around them. When a stray bolt struck nearby, Valerian moved to shield him, returning fire with deadly precision. Almost got it, Rook said, eyes fixed on his scanner. This frequency pattern is unlike anything I've seen in precursor tech. It's almost like... A massive explosion cut him off, the ground beneath them buckling. As they scrambled for stable footing, a portion of the hillside collapsed, revealing a massive structure rising from below, a tower of dark metal and crystal, pulsing with that same blue energy. "Run!" Valerian shouted, grabbing Rook and shoving him toward her squad. To the ship. They fled across the rocky terrain, the sounds of pursuit close behind. A bolt struck one of Valerian's soldiers, sending him sprawling. She turned back, but Rook caught her arm. "He's gone, we can't help him." For a moment he thought she'd strike him. Instead, she gave a curt nod and pressed on. Rook's ship, a battered but serviceable exploration vessel named the Wayfinder, stood where he'd left it, its cloaking field shimmering as they approached. He deactivated the security measures with a series of commands, the entry ramp descending with a hydraulic hiss. "Get in," he shouted as weapons fire peppered the ground around them. The two remaining soldiers scrambled aboard, Valerian providing covering fire before backing up the ramp. The ship's engines roared to life as Rook flung himself into the pilot's seat. "Strap in," he called, already plotting an escape vector. "This won't be gentle." As they tore away from the moon's surface, Rook caught a glimpse of their pursuers, sleek black ships unlike any he'd seen before. Not hegemony designs, nor any known human faction. "Who are they?" he asked, executing a series of evasive maneuvers. "Unknown," Valerian replied, strapping into the co-pilot's seat. "But they knew exactly where to find us and what defenses we had in place." Rook glanced at her, inside information. Perhaps, her expression was cold, calculating, or perhaps they've been watching longer than we realized. As they broke atmosphere, the pursuing ships fell back, making no attempt to follow them into deep space. It should have been reassuring, but Rook felt only unease. "They're letting us go," he said. "Yes." Valerian stared at the scanner displaying the receding moon, where the blue energy had now formed a visible beam shooting into space. They got what they came for. In the quiet that followed, Rook became acutely aware of his situation. A human vessel now carrying a hegemony commander and her surviving squad, fleeing from an unknown enemy after witnessing something that defied explanation. The fragile peace between their species suddenly seemed much more important than the border he'd accidentally crossed. "So," he said, setting the ship on an automated course away from the conflict zone, "I believe we need to talk, Commander." Valerian turned those amber eyes on him, and for the first time he saw something beyond military discipline, concern, perhaps even fear. "Yes, Dr. Davenport," she said quietly, "I believe we do." Convergent orbits. The Wayfinder drifted through the Vega Nebula, its systems running on minimal power to avoid detection. Inside the cramped vessel, tension hung like a physical presence as Rook Davenport studied the holographic data projections floating before him. "These energy signatures match nothing in my archives," he muttered, scrolling through comparative analyses. Whatever activated that precursor site wasn't using conventional methods. Across the cabin, Commander Valerian stood with perfect military posture despite the exhaustion evident in her eyes. Her two surviving soldiers, Nix and Terk, huddled near the ship's small medical bay, tending to their wounds with quiet efficiency. "The attack was too coordinated," Valerian said, her voice low and measured. "They knew our patrol schedules, defense protocols, even the location of our emergency beacons." Rook glanced up. "You suspect internal compromise." "I suspect everyone," she replied flatly, "including you." A tense silence followed before Rook laughed without humor. "If I were working with them, would I have risked my ship and life to extract you? Logic suggests otherwise, Commander." Valerian's mandibles clicked softly, what Rook was beginning to recognize as her version of a reluctant concession. Perhaps, but coincidences make poor foundations for trust. Then let's build on common interest instead. Rook gestured to the data. Someone is activating precursor weapons platforms across the border regions. Neither the hegemony nor the Earth Alliance wants that technology in unknown hands. The High Council must be informed, Terk interjected, wincing as he adjusted his bandaged arm. We need reinforcements. Valerian shook her head. Not until we know who we can trust. If there's infiltration at command level, we'd be walking into a trap. So we're alone, Nick said quietly. 4 against an unknown enemy with ancient superweapons. Not entirely alone, Rook replied, tapping commands into his console. A new holographic display appeared, showing a distant outpost orbiting a gas giant. I have a contact at Junction Station. Former Alliance intelligence, retired under questionable circumstances. Valerian's eyes narrowed. A spy. An information broker, Rook corrected. Zephyr Hawthorne knows things that never make official records. If anyone can identify our mystery attackers, it's her. A criminal, Terk muttered. A resource, Rook countered. And right now we're short on those. Valerian considered this, her gaze never leaving the station's holographic image. Will she report our presence? Not if we pay well enough. Zephyr's loyalty extends precisely as far as her profit margin. Rook smiled grimly. Fortunately, information about activated precursor tech will be worth more to her exclusive than shared with authorities. After a moment's deliberation, Valerian nodded. Set course, but we approach with caution. Junction Station loomed before them 12 hours later, a sprawling construct of interlocking habitation rings and docking spires. Once a legitimate trading hub, it had gradually evolved into a haven for those operating in the gray spaces between galactic laws. Keep your weapons concealed but accessible, Valerian instructed her soldiers as they prepared to disembark. She had exchanged her military armor for civilian clothes borrowed from Rook's storage, slightly too large but sufficient to disguise her identity. Without the imposing exoskeleton, she appeared almost delicate, though no less dangerous. Zephyr's office is in the commercial sector, level 8, Rook explained, checking the small blaster hidden beneath his jacket. We'll need to pass through customs, but my credentials should get us through without scrutiny. And if they don't, Nix asked. Rook's expression hardened. Then we improvise. The station's docking procedures went smoother than expected, the harried port official barely glancing at their identification before waving them through. The interior corridors bustled with activity, merchants hawking exotic wares, spacers between contracts, and beings from a dozen species engaged in transactions of varying legality. Stay close, Rook murmured as they navigated the crowded passageways. Junction attracts all types. They had nearly reached their destination when Valerian suddenly gripped Rook's arm, her fingers digging into his flesh with urgent pressure. We're being followed, she whispered, her tone leaving no room for doubt. Rook didn't turn. How many? 3 different species, moving in coordination. Her eyes flickered toward a reflective panel showing the corridor behind them. 2 o'clock and 7 o'clock positions, plus 1 overhead on the maintenance walk. Without breaking stride, Rook guided them into a bustling marketplace. Terk, Nix split off at the next junction. Create distance but stay within communication range. Valerian and I will proceed to the meeting point. The soldiers melted away into the crowd with practiced ease. Rook led Valerian through a maze of vendor stalls, occasionally doubling back or taking abrupt turns between levels. When they finally stopped in a secluded alcove overlooking a hydroponics garden, her expression was grudgingly impressed. You've done this before, she observed. Archaeological expeditions don't always stay in friendly territory, he replied, checking his communicator. Zephyr's expecting us in 10 minutes, our followers. Still present, more cautious now. Valerian's posture tensed. They're not typical bounty hunters or security. Their movement patterns suggest military training. A chill ran down Rook's spine, like whoever attacked the precursor site. Possibly. Her eyes met his, that alien amber somehow conveying a very human concern. We may be walking into an ambush. Rook considered their options. There's a service corridor that runs parallel to the main concourse. Maintenance access only, but I've used it before. It will get us to Zephyr's without exposure. Valerian nodded, following as he pried open an access panel and slipped into the narrow passage beyond. They moved in tense silence, the station's ambient hum masking their footsteps. When they finally reached a junction box marked with faded numerals, Rook paused. Zephyr's office is through here. She'll have security systems. Don't touch anything until I've announced us. The panel slid open to reveal an unexpectedly elegant space. Where Rook had expected the cluttered den of an information broker, they instead found a minimalist suite with clean lines and subtle lighting. At its center sat a human woman of indeterminate age, her silver hair cropped close to her scalp, eyes enhanced with cybernetic implants that glowed a soft blue. "Davenport," she said without looking up from the data streams flowing across her desk. "You're being followed." "I'm aware," Rook replied, stepping into the room with Valerian close behind. "Friends of yours?" Zephyr's augmented eyes flickered toward them, scanning. "Hardly. They tripped 7 of my perimeter alerts, professionals but not familiar with my particular security protocols." Her gaze lingered on Valerian. "Hegemony military, high-ranking from the implant configuration. Interesting company you're keeping these days." "We've found a mutual problem," Rook said. "So I gather." Zephyr gestured to vacant chairs. "You wouldn't risk bringing a hegemony commander to my doorstep without a compelling reason." As they settled into the offered seats, Rook transferred data from his personal device to Zephyr's systems. Precursor site activation, unauthorized and coordinated. For the first time, genuine surprise registered on the information broker's face. "When?" 36 hours ago, Valerian leaned forward. "My patrol was eliminated. Only 3 of us escaped." Zephyr's fingers danced across invisible interfaces, information flowing around her like water. "This explains the chatter. Both Hegemony and Alliance military channels have been unusually active. Coded transmissions, mobilization orders disguised as training exercises." "They know," Rook said, exchanging a glance with Valerian. "Fragments," Zephyr corrected. "Enough to be concerned, not enough to understand the true threat." She focused on the energy signatures Rook had recorded. "These patterns, I've seen something similar before." She projected a new image, grainy surveillance footage from what appeared to be a remote research facility. Figures moved through the frame, humanoid but with odd proportions, working around equipment that pulsed with familiar blue light. 3 months ago, a privately funded research outpost went dark in the Cygnus arm. By the time investigators arrived, they found this footage in empty facilities. All personnel missing, all records wiped. Zephyr enhanced a portion of the image, revealing strange symbols etched into the equipment. These match markings found at known precursor sites. "Who funded the research?" Valerian demanded. "Officially, the Quantum Frontier Institute, a legitimate scientific foundation with ties to both human and hegemony academic circles." Zephyr's expression turned grim. "Unofficially, I traced funding through 7 layers of shell corporations to a single source, the Ascendancy." Rook felt his blood chill. "That's a myth, a conspiracy theory." "Most successful conspiracies are dismissed as theories," Zephyr replied coolly. "The Ascendancy exists, a coalition of interests from multiple species, united by the belief that current galactic civilizations are evolutionary dead ends. They seek to accelerate our development, by force if necessary." "Using precursor technology," Valerian concluded. "Precisely." Zephyr tapped the image. They believe the precursors ascended beyond physical existence. They want to follow that path, regardless of how many they sacrifice to achieve it. A sudden alert flashed across Zephyr's displays. Your pursuers have breached outer security. We have minutes, perhaps less. We need to warn both governments, Rook said, rising from his chair. If the ascendancy activates more precursor sites. They already have. Zephyr projected a galactic map, 7 points pulsing with warning indicators. These activations have occurred within the past 12 hours, 3 in hegemony space, 4 in alliance territory. Valerian's eyes widened. The pattern, they're creating a resonance field. If these sites fully activate in sequence, the energy discharge could tear a hole in subspace large enough to swallow entire star systems. Rook finished, horror dawning on his face. Zephyr nodded grimly. I've prepared an information package with everything I've compiled. Take it. My fee is simple. When this is over, if you survive, remember who helped you. The door to the office shuddered, struck by some external force. Zephyr pressed a small device into Rook's hand. My private escape tunnel, 2 levels down, maintenance bay 17. A shuttle is waiting. The activation sequence centers on the Proxima boundary. That's where you'll find the Ascendancy's headquarters. Come with us, Rook urged. She shook her head. Someone needs to slow them down. Besides, I have contingencies. Another impact struck the door, metal groaning under the strain. Go, Zephyr commanded, drawing a weapon from beneath her desk. Now. They fled through the hidden passage as the office erupted in weapons fire behind them. The narrow tunnel twisted through the station's infrastructure, eventually depositing them in a small docking bay where a sleek shuttle waited. What about Terk and Nyx? Rook asked as they boarded. Valerian activated her communicator. Extraction Protocol Delta, Maintenance Bay 17. She turned to Rook. They'll come if they can. Minutes ticked by intense silence before the bay door slid open, revealing Nyx supporting a wounded Terk. Ascendancy agents, Nyx reported as they staggered aboard. They recognized our implant configurations. The entire station is crawling with them. Rook initiated launch procedures, bypassing station control with override codes Zephyr had provided. What about Zephyr? No sign, Terk grimaced, clutching his side where fresh blood seeped through his bandages. But we passed 3 dead Ascendancy agents on our way here. She took her toll. The shuttle detached from Junction Station with a hydraulic hiss, thrusters engaging as they accelerated away from the massive structure. Behind them, portions of the station's outer ring were dark, power outages or deliberate sabotage, impossible to tell. In the navigator's seat, Valerian studied the data Zephyr had provided. The Proxima boundary is heavily guarded by automated defense systems. Both our governments established the exclusion zone after the last war. Perfect cover for a secret headquarters, Rook observed. No legitimate traffic, constant sensor interference from radiation fields, and any unauthorized presence would be attributed to smugglers or salvagers. We can't breach it alone, Nyx said. Not with 1 shuttle and 4 people. Valerian was silent for a long moment, her alien features unreadable. Finally, she looked up, determination hardening her amber eyes. We won't be alone. It's time to contact my superiors and yours. Rook's head snapped toward her. You said we couldn't trust command levels. We can't, she agreed. But we have evidence now. Specific targets, verifiable data, and we don't need to trust entire command structures, just the right individuals. She turned fully toward him, her expression more open than he'd yet seen. I need you to contact Fleet Admiral Juno Pierce. She commands the Alliance's 7th Expeditionary Force. She's also your godmother, according to your personnel file. Rook stared. You accessed my classified records. Of course I did, Valerian replied matter-of-factly. just as I'm certain you've been analyzing my armor's technology and biological samples since we came aboard your ship." A reluctant smile tugged at Rook's lips. "Touché, Commander. Pierce has a reputation for integrity, even among hegemony intelligence. I can reach General Varek through secure channels. He trained me personally and has no love for political games." "And if either of them is compromised?" Nix asked. "Then we die," Valerian said simply. "But if we do nothing, billions die instead. The acceptable choice seems clear." Rook studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Set course for the Proxima boundary. I'll make the call." As the shuttle accelerated to hyperspace velocity, he found himself reflecting on the strange turn of events. A human archaeologist and a hegemony commander, united by circumstance, and now possibly the only hope for both their civilizations. The precursors had vanished millennia ago, perhaps destroyed by the very power they had harnessed. Now their legacy threatened to consume new worlds. Valerian caught his gaze, something like understanding passing between them. They were different species with centuries of mistrust between their governments, yet in this moment their priorities aligned perfectly. Survival, protection, purpose. "Ready to save the galaxy, Commander?" Rook asked, only half joking. Valerian's mandibles clicked in that subtle expression he was beginning to recognize as her version of a smile. "One step at a time, Dr. Davenport. First, let's focus on surviving the next 24 hours." "Fair enough," he agreed, turning to the communications array. "One impossible task at a time." The shuttle vanished into hyperspace, carrying its unlikely crew toward the Proxima boundary, and whatever fate awaited them there. Behind them, throughout civilized space, ancient machines continued their awakening, counting down to a convergence that would reshape the galaxy for all who called it home.